It is time now to bring in our State House insiders, Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. Guys, there have been some reports out there that South Carolina could be losing some SNAP benefits because of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Antoine, what are you hearing about that?
Well, JR, thankfully, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder because that big, ugly bill is not only going to be detrimental for healthcare in South Carolina, but for supplemental nutrition assistance programs in our state. $100 million will be the hit to South Carolina. That doesn't just impact African Americans or poor people, that impacts seniors, our veterans, school districts, school children, and so forth. And you take a poverty-stricken state like South Carolina, with as a rural, urban, and suburban poverty, that's going to drive folks further into poverty. So when people make decisions on K Street, it's impact on Main Street and my street. And for the people of South Carolina, we're going to feel the impact from the end user to the banks, to the farmers, to the grocery stores, to convenience stores, and everything in between. It's going to have impact on South Carolina, $100 million impact.
When you start taking a look at the fact that you've got federal programs and massive changes that are going to be going on in a bill that is honestly too big to know exactly how the impacts are going to play themselves out, this is a time and a place where rushing through something to get one big bill is probably not the best solution. But it's part of the decisions that Republicans are making. And to Antoine's point, because I'm sure we'll talk about that, it will have some level of ripple impact. And if that's going to be happening in South Carolina, it's going to be happening in communities across our state. And that's the place where right now you've got to start asking the question, is the big, beautiful bill really going to be a big payoff for what needs to be done to change the size of federal government, but not have the impact back in the local communities? And we'll have to see where that goes.
All right, let's talk politics for just a moment. 5th District Congressman Ralph Norman making it official. He is running for governor, and he's got the backing of former Governor Nikki Haley and former Senator Jim DeMint. What are you hearing about all of this, Dave?
This is something that is definitely not appealing to the MAGA crowd. That's for sure. Ralph Norman is looking at the fact that there's probably going to be 5 different Republicans in this race, and he's carving out for himself a group of people who says, I'm not going to be necessarily aligning myself with a MAGA vote, because you see that happening with almost every other candidate that's out there. Their ads that they're putting out are showing everything about Trump. But Ralph Norman, by being endorsed by Nikki Haley and also having the support of Jim DeMint and some other folks who are part of the traditional conservative base, he's basically creating a channel for himself to go after voters who say, this is not my kind of Republican Party. Is it going to be enough, though, to get him to a first or second place in a runoff? Because you know that's where we're going to end up in June. We'll have to see how that plays itself out.
Well, Ralph Norman is just another out of touch extremist Republican who's added his name to the buffet of being available to be chosen as one of the potential nominees for the Republican nomination. My suspicion is that so many people entering the race is going to be a runoff. So the strategy for every single one of them is, how can I get to the runoff, and how can I carve out a coalition or constituency coalition that's going to make me positioned to do well, because you don't have to win. It's not winner take all, it's winner take some. And I think that's probably going to be the angle of not only Ralph Norman, but others who may enter the race. What I can tell you is that no matter who the Republicans nominate from their buffet, I don't think any of it is going to taste good to the voters of South Carolina, because for 20 years plus, they've been in charge, and we've seen our state go full steam backwards as a result of their leadership.
Antoine, why aren't we hearing of any Democrats throwing their hat in the ring already for the race for governor?
Well, good things take time, so we tend to come late as a result of that. And so I suspect that you will see more and more conversation on the Democratic side about who's thinking about it and who's taking it very, very serious. Of course, Jermaine Johnson has already announced his intention to potentially run by way of an exploratory committee, but I think others are thinking about it. The good news is there's not a pressure point in the same way it is on the Republican side for Democrats, because I don't think we'll have 10 to 12 people seeking our party's nomination.
I think the only thing the Democrats can possibly do in this particular case is to find somebody to coalesce behind between now and November, because any sort of race that could take away from the money that needs to be spent won't give the Democrats any chance of moving forward in November in a very strong Republican state.
All right, that June primary is still several months away, about 10 months away or so. So we'll have to see what unfolds between now and then. All right, Dave, Antoine, as always, guys, thank you so very much for your time. We're going to take a quick break. We're back.